And hello, hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be here in California. Uh, oh, no sound? No, there should be sound. Um, okay, well, I don't know why that would be. Let's double check here. All right, come on, open up. Sound, sound, sound. Audio, 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 audio. Okay. What's the output? General. Okay. No, we got sound. Um, well, I can crank the sound up certainly a little bit. Um, how's that? That better? Let me know. This is okay. Um, this is, as I mentioned, Sunday night, and after the debacle of the last two attempts to do a Sunday night, we're gonna all. This is why you saw the look on my face of sheer utter horror and panic at the idea that the sound wasn't working. Um, and I don't know. Everything seems to be okay on this end. I don't know why there would be a problem on the other end. Um, so I have cranked the sound up a little louder just to make sure. And but feel free to tell me. I'm not. Have no objections to being advised if there's something wrong with the sound and things like that. Um, and please, as I said, feel free. I can adjust some things here. It's just that the idea that there was no sound at all after I had just done the reading last night and everything was fine, and I hadn't changed any settings, kind of frightened me for a moment. So, Kristen, don't worry. I'm not that upset. I just want to do it correctly this time, and see if we can get through a Sunday night reading with all of the weirdness that happened the last couple of times. So, anyway, I'm glad we seem to know what we're doing here, or at least being able to fake it. Anything to report? Not much, really. Honestly, just as I mentioned last night to the other time slot, things have been super super crazy here for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, including all through the time that I took off as a kind of sabbatical, which is one of the reasons why I'm back to reading again instead of doing something more ambitious, which I do want to do at some point. But the fact is that it's just been too much other stuff to do. Been escaping dogs and house repairs and plumbing disasters and all kinds of other things going on, and things having to do with work that I can't really explain because it's not all that interesting anyway, and it's also not stuff that is honestly within my purview to talk about some of it. But the basic thing is just that things are more or less the way they should be, at least at this point, in the sense that I am working on Navigator's Children and talking to my publishers about what the next stories might be after finishing Navigator's Children, which will finish this current series. Yes, I realize it was supposed to be 3 books and now it's 4, but you're used to that by now, I'm sure. But however, this is definitely the ending. And so I know that because I'm working on some of the climactic bits. And I'm 400, 500 pages in, so it's not going to go so long that I have to split it off into yet another volume. Not possible. So, working on Navigator's Children, trying to keep the deal with the dogs, which now requires dozens of visits outside every day because at the moment the the fence is broken, and we've been unable to prevent large dog Johnny from escaping, and we've had all kinds of repercussions because of that. So I get up early tomorrow to meet with somebody who might be able to do the fence. It's not our unwillingness to fix it. It's that I tried to do it myself several times, kept finding new ways that the dog could get out. And Um, Basically, it's become very clear that there is no fix. We're just going to have to replace the whole broken section of fence, which happened when a large tree fell down. This is one of the problems with living in a lovely, lovely wooded place like where we live, surrounded by hill. Is that every now and then large trees fall down, and we've been lucky they've never fallen down on the house, but they do fall down periodically on electrical lines, phone lines, cable lines, and fences. So that's been the current situation that, among many others, that has been keeping me occupied. So, not to complain, as I said last night, I was talking about a whole DMV smog check, getting the car thing, blah, 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 so that one of my kids could take a driver's test. And it's stuff that everybody puts up with. It's stuff that happens to everybody. It's just the immense, boring complexity, the Kafka-esque slog of daily life. It's just that every now and then, Robert Heinlein once wrote a story called, I think, The Big Bounce, or The Year of the Big Bounce. And the whole point of the story was that there are all these kind of oscillating lines of things that are going on in the world. And, some of them are disasters and some of them are just trends. And that this guy who was a statistician had plotted it out and realized that like all these things were all going to come down at the same point, which was basically going to cause civilization to come to an end, and stuff like that, and trying to convince people of this problem. And that's kind of what it's felt like this summer, not in quite that negative a sense, but I mean in the combination of resurgence of COVID and work-related stuff and escaping dogs and plumbing collapses and all that. It's been interesting. So, but as I said, no special pleading here. I know everybody goes through this stuff. So I just wish I was rich and I could pay someone else to worry about it for me. But it doesn't work that way. So anyway, so I'm going to, so that's basically all. I don't really have much to say at this point about anything. Everybody is healthy as far as I know. If not, they're not telling me about it. Two of our kids are out of town at the moment, so I'm snake sitting. And that's always interesting because what made me think of it is saying, as far as I know, everybody's well. I have not seen the snake since they left, and that's been a couple of weeks. The snake never comes out. I don't want to bug her. She is a her. I don't want to bug the snake. So I just have to trust that she's okay while I'm meanwhile doing all the other stuff that has to be done. But, she's a very shy snake and she doesn't come out to hang out. Anyway, so I'm assuming everybody's okay. Everybody I can see seems to be okay. So anyway, I am going to cruise on down the list here and say hello to everybody, and then I'm going to start reading, and that's where we're at. So first up is Lori, who has the commendable last name of Williams. Hello, Lori. Good to see you. Jerry, Mr. Unangst. Kristen, we already spoke because we were talking about whether my sound was working or not. Good to see you, Kristen, as always. Ray, hello, greetings. Good to see you. James, a pleasure. Nice to have you as always. Angie, hello. Barban, hello, hello. Who else have we got here? Jeremy, awake for this one. A week and a half of isolation for COVID and a week and a half by jumping back into full-time work. You don't have to make excuses for that, Jeremy. That sounds like a handful. I'm sitting here complaining about the DMV. So I'm glad you're up and better and that things are going better for you at the moment. Desi says, popping in for a mo to say thank you for your work as an artist. Well, that's very kind, Desi. Thank you. Remember, I only do it partially as an artist. I also do it partially as a person who doesn't like starving. So it's not a selfless endeavor. It's just one of the few things that I can stand doing for a living. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Who else have we got here? This is the same group again, commenting on the sound. There's Ron. Hello, Ron. Ron, of course, the incredibly important Ron, who along with Ilva and Jeremy and Angela have been so important to getting these books done because they have have kept me on track and helped me with a lot of issues that would have overwhelmed me otherwise, because they all know the books better than I do, which is a sad. It's not a sad commentary, because I've written other books since I wrote these. I mean, for God's sakes, this thing, I started writing this in 1985 or 86. Obviously, not every detail is going to be fresh in my mind, especially when I've written 24 or more books since then. So, but they have been invaluable in terms of keeping me connected to, what I'm actually writing about, and et cetera, et cetera. So let me see who else I haven't said hello to yet. Jeremy says he thinks he hears Johnny in the background. If you haven't heard Johnny yet, when somebody arrives with pizza, with the Sunday night pizza delivery, which is what tends to happen because I'm doing this right around dinner time. And so long ago, Deborah just said, Sunday night, we'll deliver it. We'll get pizza delivered. So you'll hear it. You will hear Johnny, I think, even downstairs. And, I think all this way away, you'll probably hear Johnny. Anyway, James asks, more Bobby Dollar. I would love to write some more Bobby Dollar. And in fact, I owe you guys a Bobby Dollar Christmas story that I started Christmas of 21, I think, or Christmas of 20, maybe Christmas of 20, which got put aside because of various other needs to get things in. So I would love to do some more Bobby Dollar. And in fact, I have another Bobby Dollar novel in my head, or at least the bones of how to put it together and what would happen. Which I've mentioned a couple times, with the working title of Forever O'Clock. So if I can get to it, the problem is, really honestly, is that these days it is so difficult. If a book doesn't sell as well as other things you've done, there's tremendous pressure. And the Bobby Dollar books did not sell as well as the big epic fantasies, which is just it's a fact. It's a fact. In the old days, it didn't matter as much. These days, publishers become more and more corporate. I've been fortunate enough to have publishers who are more willing to say, okay, we know that you sell really well over time, and that even though, you may not sell out immediately and earn your advance back in the first few weeks or something, that over time your books keep selling, they stay in print, we go back, we reprint and reprint. So, but you're still dealing with the corporate cycle, which is, well, if such and such only sold X many copies, and these other books of yours sold 2X or 3X, then, we're not going to, they don't say this, but then we're not going to push very hard if you write another one of these only sold X books. So, in a sense, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, that the pressure and the need to make a living and all this stuff tends to push you back towards the stuff that is easier for the publishers to sell. So there you go. But I would love to write another Bobby Dollar book. And as time goes on, who knows, maybe we'll find more ways to exploit, what's the word I'm looking for? Self-publishing, whatever you want to call it, so that I can do some things that, that are not as going to be as popular as, say, the Ostenard books, but are still deserve to get an audience and, that I want to write. Anyway, let me check back in here with who else I haven't said hello to. Tim. There's Tim Speckens. Hello, it's been a while. Hope everyone is doing well and isn't too cold, too hot, or too close to the fires. Amen. Oh, we got a terrible fire going on here in California as usual. Anna Branscombe has chimed in to point out that she laughed her ass off when she saw it was going to be 4 books. You guys are mean. I really try. Claudia, hello, good to see you. Angie, I think I said hello to you already, but if not, I say it again. Emily, good to see you too. Yes, the snake is a metaphor. The snake is a metaphor for many things in this household, but she's a very sweet snake, by the way. She's, as I think I mentioned, she's a ball python. She's, I don't know, about yay long now. Little bit chubby, pleasingly plump, because that's how ball pythons are. They're not the skinniest snakes. They have a sort of a Zoftig kind of quality to them. Her full name is actually Steve Irwin the Crocodile Hunter, which was what Tyler always wanted to call her, and then Tyler found out that Steve Irwin was a she, so they just kind of shortened it to Irwin. But anyway, as far as I know, she's fine. I'm adjusting her humidifier every day and changing her water, and she'll get fed in a few days, and we hope everything is fine. So, yes, the metaphorical snake. Monica, hello, good to see you. Alan, hello, hello, good to see you too. Taking a bit of break from writing your own novel. Well, that's a good thing to take a break from. I do that as often as possible. Writing my novels, I'm not taking a break from writing your novel. No, you're on your own with that one. Kelly, hello, Kelly, good to see you. And Alexis, Texas. No, not Texas. Alexis, Texas is actually a porn star, I think. This is Alexis, our friend. So hello, bam to you too. I hope that's not an Emerald reference, because that would be so late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, mostly Alexis and I throw back and forth Tim and Eric metaphors and memes, because we're both Tim and Eric fans. I'm an Adult Swim fan in general, so that's kind of my idea of things that are funny, or things that are surreal and silly, and they definitely fit into that category. And Tim and Eric, although occasionally even a little not too bizarre for me. There's no such thing as too bizarre for me. There's occasionally too what's the word I'm looking for? Too visceral sometimes for me, a little bit, some of the humor, but that's just my personal thing. But they're very surreal, they're very absurdist, and I enjoy them very much. Okay. So Alexis is handing out, I don't think you can actually hand out weed gummies online. I don't think that works, but if you figure out a way to do it, let me know, because there's a business opportunity there. I mean, obviously you can sell them online. I mean, literally give them to people. That, I don't think 3D printing technology has quite reached the point of that kind of chemistry. Anyway, okay, so I've said hello to everybody. It's funny, just during the time I was saying hello to everybody, we lost 3 viewers. They either went, oh, is this what he does? He just kind of goes all day saying hello to people on his chat. Okay. So we are returning to the Dragonbone chair. We are now in chapter 3, because I finished chapter 2, and we had about an extra 10 minutes. So I started chapter 3, which is called Birds in the Chapel. And it starts out with Rachel the Dragon, the mistress of chambermaids, being in a very, very grumpy mood about Simon. And this idea that Simon was going to go work for Dr. Morgenes, and, it's like Simon never does any work anyway, and she thinks the two of them are just going to sit around all day. And, Angie, yes, I was very much raised on Monty Python, so yes, absolutely. So Rachel is reminiscing as she's doing various chores and feeling sorry for herself, which is one of Rachel's main tendencies. And, as she's doing this, she thinks back on, Morgenes has always kind of cared for Simon and worried about Simon. And she's thinking back to the night where, as it turns out, we find out where Simon was born. And that's what's going on. So I'm going to reread the first 4 or 5 paragraphs just to put you back in the scene. So this is 15 years in the past. It was not long before Morgenes was stamping up the stairs, shaking the water from his cloak. At the doorway, he absorbed the scene in a single glance. A woman on the bed, with her face turned away, big with child and groaning. Dark hair lay across her face, and she squeezed in a sweaty fist the hand of another young woman who kneeled beside her. At the foot of the bed, Rachel stood with an older woman. The old one stepped toward Morgenes while he shed his bulky outer clothing. "Hello, Elspeth," he said quietly. "How does it look?" "Not good, I'm afraid, sir. You know I could have dealt with it otherwise. She's been trying for hours, and she's bleeding. Her heart is very faint." As Elspeth spoke, Rachel moved nearer. Morgenes bent and rummaged in the sack he had brought. "Give her some of this, please," he said, handing Rachel a stoppered vial. "Just a swallow, but mind she gets it." He returned to searching his bag as Rachel gently pried open the clenched, trembling jaw of the woman on the bed and poured a little of the liquid into her mouth. The odor of sweat and blood that suffused the room was suddenly supplemented by a pungent, spicy scent. "Doctor," Elspeth was saying as Rachel returned, "I don't think we can save both mother and child, if we can save even one." "You must save the child's life," Rachel interrupted. "That's the duty of the God-fearing. The priest says so. Save the child." Morgenes turned to her with a look of annoyance. "My good woman, I will fear God in my own way, if you don't mind. If I save her, and I do not pretend to know I can, then she can always have another child." "No, she can't," Rachel said hotly. "Her husband's dead." Morgenes, of all people, should know that, she thought. Susanna's fisherman husband had often visited the doctor before he drowned, although what they might have had to talk about Rachel could not imagine. "Well," said Morgenes distractedly, "she can always find another." "What? Her husband?" A startled look came to his face, and he hurried to the bedside. He seemed to finally realize who it was lying there, bleeding her life out on the rough sheet. "Susanna?" he asked quietly, and turned the woman's fearful, pain-clenched face toward him. Her eyes opened wide for a moment as she saw him, then another wave of agony shut them again. "Ah, what has happened here?" Morgenes sighed. Susanna could only moan, and the doctor looked up at Rachel and Elspeth with anger on his face. "Why didn't anyone inform me that this poor girl was ready to bear a child?" "She was not due for 2 months more," Elspeth said gently. "You know that. We are as surprised as you." "And why should you care that a fisherman's widow was going to have a baby?" Rachel said. She could be angry, too. "And why are you arguing about it now?" Morgenes stared at her for a moment, then blinked twice. "You are absolutely correct," he said, and turned back to the bed. "I will save the child, Susanna," he told the shivering woman. She nodded her head once, then cried out. It was a thin, keening wail, but it was the cry of a living baby. Morgenes handed the tiny red-smeared creature to Elspeth. "A boy," he said, and returned his attention to the mother. She was quiet now and breathing more slowly, but her skin was white as Harcha marble. "I saved him, Susanna. I had to," he whispered. The corners of the woman's mouth twitched. It might have been a smile. "I know," she said, voice coming ever so softly in her raw throat. "If only my Aelferend had not—" The effort was too much, and she stopped. Elspeth leaned down to show her the child, wrapped in blankets, still attached by the bloody umbilicus. "He is small," the old woman smiled, "but that's because he arrived so early. What's his name?" "Call him Sailman," Susanna croaked out. "It means waiting." She turned to Morgenes and seemed to want to say something more. The doctor leaned closer, his white hair brushing her snow-pale cheek, but she could not make the words come. A moment later she gasped once, and her dark eyes rolled up until the whites showed. The girl holding her hand began to sob. Rachel, too, felt tears come to her eyes. She turned away and pretended to begin cleaning up. Elspeth was severing the infant's last tie to his dead mother. The movement caused Susanna's right hand, which had been tightly tangled in her own hair, to sag free and drop limply to the floor. As it struck, something shiny flew from her clutching palm and rolled across the rough boards to stop near the doctor's feet. From the corner of her eye, Rachel saw Morgenes stoop down and pick the object up. It was small and disappeared easily into the palm of his hand, and from there into his bag. Rachel was outraged, but no one else seemed to have noticed. She whirled to confront him, teardrops still standing in her eyes, but the look on his face, the terrible grief, stilled her before she breathed a word. "He will be Saoman," the doctor said, his eyes strange and shadowed now as he moved closer, his voice hoarse. "You must take care of him, Rachel. His parents are dead, you know." A swift intake of breath. Rachel had caught herself just before she slipped off the stool, nodding off in bright daylight. She was ashamed of herself. Then again, it only went to show the criminal length to which she had driven herself today, all in an effort to make up for the 3 girls off, and for Simon. What she needed was a little fresh air. Up on a stool, swatting the broom around like a mad woman. No wonder a body started in getting the vapors. She'd just step outside for a moment. The Lord knew she had every right to a little fresh air. That Simon, such a wicked boy. They'd raised him, of course, she and the chambermaids. Susanna hadn't any kinfolk nearby, and no one seemed to know much of anything about her drowned husband, Aelfarand, so they kept the boy. Rachel had pretended to raise a fuss over it, but she would no more have let him go than she would have betrayed her king or left beds unmade. It was Rachel who had given him the name Simon. Everyone in the service of King John's household took a name from the king's native island, Warenston. Simon was the closest to Saoman, and so Simon it was. Rachel went slowly down the stairs to the bottom floor, feeling just a little shaky in the legs. She wished she'd brought a cloak, as the air was bound to be nippy. The door creaked open slowly. It was such a heavy door, needed the hinges oiled, most likely, and she walked out into the entry yard. The morning sun was just nosing over the battlement, peeping like a child. She liked this spot, just underneath the stone span that connected the dining hall building with the main body of the chapel. The little courtyard in the shadow of the span was full of pine trees and heather, all set about on small sloping hills. The whole garden was not more than a stone's throw in length. Looking up past the stone walkway, she could see the needle-slim thrust of Green Angel Tower, shining white in the sunlight like an ivory tusk. There had been a time, Rachel remembered, long before Simon came, when she herself had been a girl playing in this garden. How some of those maids would laugh to think of that, the dragon as a little girl. Well, she had been, and after that a young lady. Not unpleasant to look at either, and that was only the truth. The garden then had been full of the rustle of brocade and silk, of lords and ladies laughing with hawks on their fists and a merry song on their lips. Now, Simon, he thought he knew everything. God just made young men stupid, and that was that. Those girls had nearly spoiled him beyond redemption, and would have, if Rachel hadn't kept her eye out. She knew what was what, even if these young ones thought otherwise. Things were different once, Rachel thought. And as she thought it, the pine smell of the shaded garden seemed to catch at her heart. The castle had been such a beautiful, stirring place. Tall knights, plumed and shiny mailed, and beautiful girls in fine dresses. The music. Oh, and the tourney field, all jewel-bright with tents. Now the castle slept quietly and only dreamed. The towering battlements were commanded by Rachel's kind, by cooks and chambermaids, seneschals and scullions. It was a little chilly. Rachel leaned forward, hugging her shawl tighter, then straightened up, staring. Simon stood before her, hands hidden behind his back. How on earth had he managed to slip up on her that way? And why did he have that idiot grin smeared across his face? Rachel felt the strength of righteousness come surging back into her body. His shirt, clean an hour before, was blackened with dirt and torn in several places, as were his breeches. "Blessed Saint Rehab, save me!" Rachel shrieked. "What have you done, you fool boy?" Riapa had been an Adenite woman of Naban, who had died with the name of the one god on her lips after being repeatedly violated by sea pirates. She was a great favorite with domestics. "Look what I have, Rachel," Simon said, producing a tattered, lopsided cone of straw, a bird's nest. It gave off faint chirps. "I found it underneath Gelden's tower. It must have blown off in the wind. 3 of them are still alive, and I'm going to raise them." "Are you utterly mad?" Rachel lifted her broom on high like the vengeful lightnings of the Lord that had surely destroyed Riap's ravagers. "You are no more going to raise those creatures in my household than I am going to swim to Perdruin. Filthy things, flying around, getting in people's hair, and look at your clothes. Do you know how long it will take Sarah to patch all that?" The broomstick quivered in the air. Simon cast his eyes down. He had not found the nest on the ground, of course. It was the one he had spotted in the hedge garden, partially dislodged from its seat in the festival oak. He had climbed up to rescue it, and in the excitement at the thought of having the young birds for his own, he had not given a thought to the work he was making for Sarah, the quiet, homely girl who did the downstairs mending. A wave of gloom and frustration washed over him. "But, Rachel, I remembered to pick the rushes." He balanced the nest carefully and pulled from beneath his jerkin a meager, bedraggled clump of reeds. Rachel's expression softened somewhat, but the scowl remained. "It's just that you don't think, boy. You don't think. You're like a little child. If something gets broken or something is done late, someone has to take responsibility for it. That's the way the world is. I know you mean no real harm, but must you be so by Our Lady stupid?" Simon looked up cautiously. Although his face still showed sorrow and contrition in proper measure, Rachel, with her basilisk eye, could see that he thought he was through the worst of it. Her brow re-beetled. I'm sorry, Rachel, truly I am," he was saying when she reached out and poked his shoulder with the broom handle. "Don't you come to the old sorry with me, lad. Just you take those birds out of here and put them back. There'll be no flapping, flying creatures round these parts." "Oh, Rachel, I could keep them in a cage. I could build one." No, and once more means no. Take them and give them to your useless doctor if you want, but don't bring them round to trouble honest people who have work to do." Simon trudged off, the nest cupped in his hands. He had made a miscalculation somewhere. Rachel had almost given in, but she was a tough old stalk. The slightest error in dealing with her meant swift, terrible defeat. "Simon!" she called. He whirled. "I can keep them?" "Of course not. Don't be a mooncalf." She stared at him. An uncomfortably long time passed. Simon shifted from foot to foot and waited. "You go work for the doctor, boy," she said at last. "Maybe he can squeeze some sense into you. I give up." She glowered at him. "Mind you do what you're told, and thank him, and what little luck you have left, for this one last chance. Understand?" "Yes, certainly," he said happily. "You're not escaping from me all that easily. Be back at dinner hour." "Yes, mistress." Simon turned to hurry off to Morgenes, then stopped. "Rachel? Thank you." Rachel made a noise of disgust and marched back toward the stairs to the dining hall. Simon wondered how she had gotten so many pine needles stuck in her shawl. A gentle mist of snow had begun to float down from the low, tin-colored clouds. The weather had turned for good, Simon knew. It would be cold right through to Candlemansa. Rather than carry the baby birds across the windy courtyard, he decided to duck through the chapel and continue through to the western side of the inner bailey. Morning prayers had been over for an hour or two, and the church should be empty. Father Dragonbone might not look kindly on Simon tramping through his lair, but the good father was undoubtedly entrenched at table with his usual large mid-morning meal, humming ominously at the quality of the butter or the consistency of the honey and bread pudding. Simon climbed the 24 steps up to the chapel's side door. The snow had started to flurry. The gray stone of the doorway was dotted with a wet residue of dying flakes. The door swung back on surprisingly silent hinges. Rather than leave telltale wet footprints across the tile floor of the chapel, he pushed through the velvet hangings at the back of the entry chamber and climbed another set of stairs to the choir loft. The cluttered, stuffy loft, a steaming misery box during high summer, was now pleasantly warm. The floor was strewn with bits of the monks' leavings, nutshells, an apple core, scraps of slate roof tiles on which messages had been written, in petty contravention of the silence vows. It looked more like a cage for apes or festival bears than a room where men of God came to sing the Lord's praises. Simon smiled, threading his way quietly among the various other oddments strewn about, bolts of plain cloth, a few small, flimsy wooden stools. It was nice to know that those dour-faced, shaven-headed men could be as unruly as farm boys. Alarmed by the sudden sound of conversation, Simon stopped and edged back into the wall, hanging that Let me start that one again. Alarmed by the sudden sound of conversation, Simon stopped and edged back into the wall hanging that blanketed the rear of the loft. Crushed into the musty fabric, he held his breath as his heart raced. If Father Dragonbone or Barnabas the sexton were below, he would never make his way down and out the far door unobserved. He would have to sneak back out the way he had come, using the courtyard route after all, the master spy in the enemy's camp. Squatting, silent as cotton wool, Simon strained to locate those who spoke. He seemed to hear two voices. As he concentrated, the birdlings peeped quietly in his hands. He balanced the nest carefully for a moment in the crook of his elbow while he pulled off his hat. More woe to him if Father Dragonbone should catch him hatted in the chapel, then slid the soft brim down over the top of the nest. The chicks went promptly silent, as if night had fallen. Parting the edges of the hanging with trembling care, he leaned his head out. The voices were rising from the aisle below the altar. Their tones seemed unaltered. He had not been heard. Only a few torches were lit. The vast roof of the chapel was almost entirely painted in shadow, the shining windows of the dome seeming to float in a nighttime sky, holes in the darkness through which the lines of heaven could be seen. His foundlings, capped and delicately cradled, Simon crept forward on noiseless feet to the rail of the choir loft. Positioning himself at the shadowy end nearest the staircase, descending to the chapel proper, he poked his face between the carved rails of the balustrade, one cheek against the martyrdom of St. Tuneth, the other rubbing the birth of St. Polypa of the island. "And you, with your God-be-cursed complaining," one of the voices railed. "I have grown unutterably tired of it." Simon could not see the speaker's face. His back was to the loft, and he wore a high-collared cloak. Sorry, I'm smiling because somebody mentioned earlier they thought they could hear Johnny. I'm wondering if you can hear him now. Pizza delivery showed up. "And you with your God-be-cursed complaining," one of the voices railed. "I have grown unutterably tired of it." Simon could not see the speaker's face. His back was to the loft, and he wore a high-collared cloak. His companion, however, slumped across from him on a pew bench, was quite visible. Simon recognized him at once. "People who are told things they do not want to hear often call such tidings complaining, brother," said the one on the bench, and waved a slim-fingered left hand wearily. "I warn you about the priest out of love for the kingdom." There was a moment's silence. "And in memory of the affection we once shared." "You may say anything you wish to," the first man barked, his anger sounding strangely like pain. "But the chair is mine by law and our father's wish. Nothing you think, say, or do can change that." Joshua Lackhand, as Simon had often heard the king's younger son called, pushed himself stiffly up from the bench. His pearl-gray tunic and hose bore subtle patterns of red and white. He wore his brown hair cropped close to his face and high upon his forehead. Where his right hand should have been, a capped cylinder of black leather protruded from his sleeve. "I do not want the Dragonbone chair. Believe that, Elias," he hissed. His words were soft-spoken, but they flew to Simon's hiding place like arrows. "I merely warn you against the priest Pryrates, a man with unhealthy interests. Do not bring him here, Elias. He is a dangerous man. Believe me, for I know him of old from the Usarian seminary in Naban. The monks there shunned him like a plague carrier, and yet you continue to give him your ear, as though he were as trustworthy as Ducas Grimner or old Sir Fluirin. Fool! He will be the ruin of our house." He composed himself. "I seek only to offer a word of heartfelt advice to you. Please believe me, I have no designs on the throne." "Then leave the castle," Elias growled, and turned his back on his brother, arms crossed on his chest. "Go, and let me prepare to rule as a man should, free of your complaints and manipulation." The older prince had the same high brow and hawk-like nose, but was far more powerfully built than Joshua. He looked like a man who could break necks with his hands. His hair, like his riding boots and tunic, was black. His cloak and hose were a travel-stained green. "We are both our father's sons, O king-to-be." Joshua's smile was mocking. "The crown is yours by right. The griefs we bear against each other need not worry you. Your soon-to-be royal self will be quite safe. My word on that. But," his voice gained force, "I will not, do you hear me, will not be ordered out of my sire's house by anyone, not even you, Elias." His brother turned and stared. As their eyes met, it seemed to Simon a flash of swords. "Griefs we bear against each other," Elias snarled, and there was something broken and agonized in his voice. "What grief can you bear against me? Your hand?" He walked away from Joshua a few steps and stood with his back to his brother, his words thick with bitterness. "The loss of a hand. Because of you I stand a widower and my daughter half an orphan. Do not speak to me of grief." Joshua seemed to hold his breath for a time before replying. Your pain is known to me, brother," he said at last. "Do you not know I would have given not just my right hand, but my life?" Elias whirled, reaching a hand to his throat, and pulled something glittering from out of his tunic. Simon gaped between the railings. It was not a knife, but something soft and yielding like a swatch of shimmering cloth. Elias held it before his brother's startled face for a sneering moment, then threw it to the floor, pivoted on his heel, and stalked away up the aisle. Josua stood motionless for a long moment, then bent like a man in a dream to pick up the bright object, a woman's silver scarf. As he stared, its gleam cupped in his hand, a grimace of pain or rage twisted his face. Simon breathed in and out several times before Josua at last tucked the thing into the breast of his shirt and followed his brother out of the chapel. A lengthy interval had passed before Simon felt safe to creep down from his spying place and make his way to the chapel's main door. He felt as though he had witnessed a strange puppet show, a Eurydice play enacted for him alone. The world suddenly seemed less stable, less trustworthy. If the princes of Erkenland, heirs to all Ost and Ard, could shout and brawl like drunken soldiers. Peering into the hall, Simon was startled by a sudden movement. A figure in a brown jerkin hurrying away up the corridor. A small figure, a youth of perhaps Simon's age or less. The stranger flicked a glance backward, a brief glimpse of startled eyes, and then was gone around the corner. Simon did not recognize him. Could this person have been spying on the princes too? Simon shook his head, feeling as confused and stupid as a sun-struck ox. He pulled his hat off the nest, bringing daylight and chirping life back to the birds. Again he shook his head. It had been an unsettling morning. Time is it? Yes, we've got time. Chapter 4, Cricket Cage. Morgenes was rattling about his workshop, deeply engaged in a search for a missing book. He waved Simon permission to find a cage for the young birds, then went back to his hunt, toppling piles of manuscripts and folios like a blind giant in a city of fragile towers. Finding a home for the nestlings was more difficult than Simon had expected. There were plenty of cages, but none seemed quite right. Some had bars so widely spaced that they seemed built for pigs or bears. Others were already crammed full of strange objects, none of which resembled animals in the least. Finally, he found one that seemed suitable beneath a roll of shiny cloth. It was knee-high and bell-shaped, made of tightly twisted river reeds, empty but for a layer of sand on the bottom. There was a small door on the side, held closed by a twist of rope. Simon worried the knot loose and opened it. "Stop! Stop that this instant!" "What?" Simon leaped back. The doctor hopped past him and pushed the cage door shut with his foot. "Sorry to alarm you, boy," Morgenes panted, "but I should have thought before sending you off to dig and muck about. This is no good for your purpose, I'm afraid." "But why not?" Simon leaned forward, squinting, but could see nothing extraordinary. "Well, my grub, stand here for a bit and don't touch, and I'll show you. Silly of me not to have remembered." Morgenes cast about for a moment until he found a long-ignored basket of dried fruit. He blew the dust off a fig as he walked to the cage. "Now observe carefully." He opened the door and tossed in the fruit. It landed in the sand on the cage bottom. "Yes?" asked Simon, puzzled. "Wait," whispered the doctor. No sooner had the word passed his lips than something began to happen. At first it seemed that the air in the cage was shimmering. It quickly became apparent that the sand itself was shifting, eddying delicately around the fig. Suddenly, so suddenly that Simon jumped backward with a surprised grunt, a great toothy mouth opened in the sand, gulping the fruit as swiftly as a carp might break the surface of a pond to take a mosquito. There was a brief ripple along the sand, and then the cage was still again, as innocent seeming as before. "What's under there?" Simon gasped. Morgenes laughed. "That's it." He seemed very pleased. "That's the beastie itself. There is no sand. It's just a A masquerade, so to speak. The whole thing at the bottom of the cage is one clever animal. Lovely, isn't it? I suppose so, said Simon without much conviction. Where does it come from? Nescadu, out in the desert countries. You can see why I didn't want you poking about in there. I don't think your feathered orphans would have had a very happy time of it either. Morgenes shut the cage door again, binding it closed with a leather thong, and placed it on a high shelf. Having climbed onto his table to accomplish this, he then continued along its great length, stepping expertly over the litter until he found what he wanted, and hopped down. This container, made of thin strips of wood, held no suspicious sand. Cage for crickets, the doctor explained, and helped the youth move the birds into their new home. A small dish of water was placed within. From somewhere else, Morgenes even produced a tiny sack of seeds, which he scattered on the cage floor. Are they old enough for that? Simon wondered. The doctor waved a careless hand. Not to worry, he said. Good for their teeth. Simon promised his birds that he would be back soon with something more suitable, and followed the doctor across the workshop. Well, young Simon, charmer of finch and swallow, Morgenes smiled, what can I do for you this cold forenoon? It seems to me that we had not completed your just and honorable frog transaction the other day when we were forced to stop. Yes, and I was hoping. And I believe there was another thing, too. What? Simon thought hard. A little matter of a floor in need of sweeping? A broom, lone and lorn, aching in its twiggy heart, to be put to use? Simon nodded glumly. He had hoped an apprenticeship might start on a more auspicious note. Ah, a small aversion to menial labor? The doctor cocked an eyebrow. Understandable, but misplaced. One should treasure those humdrum tasks that keep the body occupied, but leave the mind and heart unfettered. Well, we shall strive to help you through your first day of service. I have thought of a wonderful arrangement. He did a funny little jig step. I talk, you work. Good, eh? Simon shrugged. Do you have a broom? I forgot mine. Morgenes poked around behind the door, producing at last an object so worn and cobwebby it was scarcely recognizable as a tool for sweeping. Now, the doctor said, presenting it to him with as much dignity as if it were the king's own standard, what do you want me to talk to you about? About the sea raiders and their black iron, and the Sithee, and our castle, of course, and King John. Ah, yes, he nodded thoughtfully. A longish list, but if we are not once again interrupted by that cloth-headed sluggard Inch, I might be able to whittle it down a bit. Set to, boy, set to. Let the dust fly. By the by, where exactly in the story was I? Oh, the Rimmersmen had come, and the Sithee were retreating, and the Rimmersmen had iron swords, and they were chopping people up and killing everyone. Killing the Sithee with black iron? Said Morgenes dryly. It comes back to me now. Well, truth be told, the northern raiders were not killing quite everybody. Neither were their expansions and assaults quite so relentless as I may have made them sound. They were many years in the north before they ever crossed the frost march. Even then they ran into a major obstacle, the men of Hernistir. Yes, but the Sithee folk? Simon was impatient. He knew all about the Hernistiri, had met many people from that pagan western land. You said that the little people had to flee from the iron swords. Not little people, Simon. Oh, my. The doctor slumped down onto a pile of leather-bound books and pulled at his sparse chin whiskers. I can see that I must give this story in greater depth. Are you expected back for the midday meal? No, Simon lied promptly. An uninterrupted story from the doctor seemed a fair bargain for one of Rachel's fabled thrashings. Good. Well then, let us find ourselves some bread and onions, and perhaps a noggin of something to drink. Talking is such thirsty work. Then I shall endeavour to turn dross to purest metal absolute. In short, to teach you something. When they had provisioned themselves, the doctor once more took a seat. Well and well, Simon. Oh, and don't be bashful about wielding that broom while you eat. The young are so flexible. Now, correct me, please, if I misspeak. The day today is Drawers Day, the 15th? 16th? No, 15th of November. And the year is 1164, is it not? I think so. Excellent. Do put that over on the stool, will you? So, the 1164th year since what? Do you know? Morgenes leaned forward. Simon pulled a sour face. The doctor knew he was a mooncalf and was teasing him. How was a scullion supposed to know about such things? He continued to sweep in silence. After some moments he looked up. The doctor was chewing, staring at him intently over a crusty chunk of dark bread. What sharp blue eyes the old man has. Simon turned away again. Well, then, the doctor said around a mouthful, it's what? I don't know, Simon muttered, hating the sound of his own resentful voice. So be it. You don't know, or you think you don't. Do you listen to the proclamations when the crier reads them? Sometimes, when I'm at market. Otherwise, Rachel tells me what they say. And what comes at the end? They read the date at the end. Do you remember? And mind that crystal urn, boy. You sweep like a man shaving his worst enemy. What does it say at the end? Simon, nettled with shame, was about to throw the broom down and leave when suddenly a phrase floated up from the depths of his memory, bringing with it market sounds, the wind snapping of pennants and awnings, and the clean smell of spring grass strewn underfoot. Since the founding, he was sure. He heard it as though he were standing on Main Row. Excellent! The doctor lifted his jar as if in salute and knocked back a long swallow. Now, the founding of what? Don't worry, he continued as Simon began to shake his head. I'll tell you. I don't expect young men these days, raised as they are on apocryphal errantry and derring-do, to know much of the real substance of events. The doctor shook his own head, mock sadly. The Nabani Imperium was founded, or declared to be founded, 1160 whatever it was years ago by Tiagoras, the first imperator. At that time the legions of Naban ruled all the countries of men, north and south, on both sides of the river Glenewent. But Naban is small. Simon was astonished. It's just a small part of King John's kingdom. That, young man, Morgenes said, is what we call history. And I think I'm going to stop there, because I like that line, even though it's in mid-paragraph. And we are just about out of time, so, sorry, 3D. Dr. Tongue's 3D House of Stewardesses. Sorry, there's a very old reference for you, dating back to the 70s, I think. Yeah, late 70s. Anyway, so it seems like everything went well with the new software, so hooray, hooray. I am very happy by that, with that, and about that. Just piling the prepositions on here. The great Orbnauticus. So anyway, so I will be back next week, first on 1 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and then this slot, 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, both Sunday. I thank you, as always, for joining me, and it's kind of fun to go back and read Dragonbone Chair. It's a lot easier than for me than some of the other books because since I just reread it a couple of years ago, I actually remember which characters are coming up, and that makes it easier to read. I don't have to suddenly go, "Oh my God, a new voice." Not quite as much, anyway. So that is basically where we're at here. Again, good to see you. A pleasure to have you. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of your loved ones. Take good care of your friends and neighbors. And we will all make it through. And not only make it through, we will triumph together. So thank you. Good night. See you next Sunday. Have a lovely week. Peace.